Most people think dementia starts with memory loss, but it actually begins years earlier, quietly, and almost unnoticed. Long before memory disappears, the brain starts sending small warning signals that most people ignore. Subtle changes in behavior, small shifts in thinking, tiny signs that feel harmless at first. And one of these signs might already be happening to you right now. By the time most people recognize them, the damage has already been progressing for years. What you're about to hear are the early signals most people miss, and why noticing them early can make all the difference. The human brain has an incredible ability to adapt, repair, and recover. It constantly adjusts to challenges and tries to maintain balance, even under stress. But dementia is one of the few conditions where timing matters more than anything else. Once it progresses beyond certain stages, the damage becomes extremely difficult to reverse. Dementia is not a single disease. It's a general term used to describe a decline in mental ability that interferes with daily life. It affects memory, reasoning, behavior, personality, and decision-making. Most people assume dementia is just a normal part of aging. But that's not true. Aging may slow certain processes, but dementia is caused by physical changes in the brain. The most common form is Alzheimer's disease. It's associated with abnormal protein buildup in the brain, including amyloid plaques and tau tangles, which interfere with communication between brain cells and eventually lead to cell damage. But Alzheimer's is only one type among many. There is also vascular dementia caused by reduced blood flow to the brain, and Lewy body dementia linked to abnormal protein deposits. Some people even develop mixed forms that involve multiple mechanisms at once. What's important to understand is this. Regardless of the type, the progression follows a similar pattern. Once certain thresholds are crossed, recovery becomes extremely difficult. That's why early awareness matters more than diagnosis. Most medical conversations focus on labeling the condition, but labels don't change outcomes. What changes outcomes is recognizing the warning signs early, before the brain loses the ability to compensate. Dementia does not begin suddenly. It develops slowly, often over many years, and the earliest signs are usually subtle and easy to ignore. Let's walk through the stages, because the earlier you recognize these signs, the more you can actually do about them. And this is where most people miss the first warning signs. The first stage is what some doctors still call normal. This is where most people believe everything is fine, but even here, the brain may already be under stress. You might occasionally forget a word, walk into a room and forget why you went there, or feel mentally tired more quickly than before. At this stage, these changes are often dismissed as stress or aging, and sometimes that's true. But this is also the stage where prevention works best, because the brain still has a strong ability to adapt. The second stage involves very mild cognitive decline. You may notice small memory lapses more frequently, finding words becomes harder, and concentration feels weaker. But here's what most people don't realize. You might misplace items more often or struggle to recall names that once came easily. This still isn't dementia, but it's a warning phase where the brain is beginning to lose efficiency. Energy production declines, communication between neurons slows down, and simple tasks begin to require more effort. The third stage is early cognitive impairments, where changes become more noticeable. Short-term memory becomes unreliable. You may read something and forget it minutes later, repeat questions, or struggle to follow conversations. At this point, many people begin to compensate by writing notes, setting reminders, and creating routines. This is actually a good sign because it means the brain still has awareness and motivation. But what comes next is where most people start to lose control without realizing it. Planning becomes harder. Tasks that require multiple steps feel overwhelming, and mental flexibility begins to decline. The fourth stage marks moderate cognitive decline, where daily life becomes affected in a more obvious way. People may forget recent events entirely, struggle with simple calculations, and find it difficult to manage finances or schedules. Brain energy drops significantly, blood flow decreases, inflammation increases, and neural communication weakens. At this stage, reversal becomes unlikely, but progression can still be slowed with the right interventions. Behind the scenes, physical degeneration is occurring. Brain cells produce less energy, transmit signals less efficiently, and become more vulnerable to damage over time. Before memory loss becomes obvious, the body often sends signals, and these signals are often mistaken for completely normal aging. And this is the point where most people ignore what their body is trying to tell them. One of the earliest signs is mental fatigue. You feel tired mentally even after resting, and concentration requires more effort than it used to. Another sign is reduced motivation, where things you once enjoyed begin to feel exhausting. This is not laziness, it's neurological fatigue. Posture often changes as well. People begin to hunch forward, movement becomes slower and less coordinated, and you may notice reduced arm swing when walking or a slight tremor when sitting still. Handwriting may become smaller and more cramped, a condition known as micrographia, which is linked to changes in brain function. Loss of smell is another early indicator, and this is one of the earliest changes many people completely overlook. Smell is closely connected to brain health, and its decline can signal deeper neurological changes. Since the brain controls sleep cycles and hormone release, and when brain function declines, sleep quality often suffers. Judgment is often affected next. People may make poor decisions without realizing it, struggle to manage time or money, and find it harder to reason through problems. Speech patterns may also change, with sentences losing structure and thoughts jumping without clear connection, reflecting declining coordination between different areas of the brain. In later stages, memory loss becomes severe. People may forget their address or phone number, fail to recognize loved ones, or become disoriented. They may wander or become confused about time and place, making independent living extremely difficult. Eventually, personality fades. The person is physically present but mentally absent, and recognition, awareness, and emotional connection begin to disappear. This is the stage most people associate with dementia, but by then, intervention is extremely limited. The most important lesson is this. Most people wait until memory fails, but by then, the process has already been developing for years. Dementia does not begin with memory loss. It begins with reduced brain energy, reduced stimulation, and gradual decline in function. The good news is that the brain can respond positively to change, especially in the early stages. When you improve movement, nutrition, sleep, and mental engagement, you give the brain what it needs to maintain and even recover function. But timing is everything. Once motivation disappears, change becomes much more difficult. That's why awareness matters more than treatment. If you recognize these signs early, you can act. You can slow the process, preserve function, and maintain independence. Dementia is not an event, it is a process. And the earlier you intervene, the more control you retain over your future. Your brain is not failing you. It's communicating with you, long before serious damage appears. And when you listen early, you give yourself the best possible chance to protect your mind, your independence, and your quality of life. If you found this helpful, subscribe to my channel, because understanding these early signs could make a real difference.